You're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. February 24th, 2022 was the day Russia launched a military offensive against Ukraine, catching the entire world off guard as the superior Russian military rolled the Ukraine, spreading death and destruction in an unprepared nation. While the Ukrainian forces were reduced to a militia, it did slow down Putin's advance as the West struggled to come up with a concerted response to Putin. At first, the United States refrained from providing aid to Ukraine, while the European powers struggled with a response due to their own dependence on Russian energy. But Ukraine's President Zelensky continued to rally the nation against Russia and maintained the lobbying in the Western powers for support. In time, essential aid, in this case arms and ammunition, began pouring into Ukraine, slowing down the Russian war machine and even liberating Russian-held territory. Now, in a major message to Kremlin, United States President Joe Biden made a surprise visit to the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv, promising to expand American aid to Ukraine's fight against Russia. During his 5-hour visit, a brief one though, he paid tribute to the fallen soldiers who have died defending Ukraine and announced a new military aid package worth $500 million. Sending a message to Putin, Biden said Russia thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided, but he was wrong. He also said that Ukraine reminds the world of what courage is. Zelensky, in fact, thanked Joe Biden, saying the fate of democracy all over the world will be decided by this conflict. The onslaught continues in Ukraine as Putin pours in more Russian forces. But beyond the optics, does Biden's visit mark a turning point in this war?
You know, 1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands, democracy stands, the Americans stand with you, and the world stands with you.
Welcome you in Ukraine. It is a great honor for me and for all of us. We have just had negotiations with the President of the United States in the vis-a-vis format, and then we had a wide discussion with the involvement of our teams. These conversations brings us closer to the victory, and we hope that this year, the 2023, will become a year of victory.
Let me go straight to Ground Zero Kyiv, where Sanjay Suri is joining us live. Sanjay, it did come as a surprise, but a brief visit of Joe Biden is a strong enough message to Russia and also to all the European nations.
It is a momentous message, and it is a massive moment here, Maria, because, well, you say it was a surprise visit. Certainly it was a surprise visit. On the eve of the visit, it was not quite a surprise because through the night, there were massive security arrangements being made in Kyiv. And clearly, there were preparations for something quite extraordinary, which, of course, we got to see. But also, it would not really have been realistic and appropriate for President Biden to have come to Warsaw in Poland, mark the anniversary, and go back as if from the doorstep. That is what had been announced earlier. That would have been a very awkward thing for Biden to have done, considering that the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson started this visits to Ukraine, and Sunak followed, Macron followed, the German Chancellor followed.
और उसके हमारे कर्मियों ने जिस संवेदना से काम किया वो भी बहुत ही प्रशंसनीय है। साथियों, 2001 में जब गुजरात में भूकंप आया था और उसे पिछली शताब्दी का बहुत बड़ा भूकंप माना जाता था, ये तो उससे भी कई गुना बड़ा है। जब गुजरात का भूकंप आया तो मैं बहुत लंबे समय तक वहां एक वॉलंटियर के रूप में बचाव कार्यों में जुड़ा था। मलबा हटाने में जो दिक्कतें आती हैं, मलबे में लोगों को खोजना कितना मुश्किल होता है, खाने पीने की दिक्कत कितनी होती है, दवाइयों से लेकर अस्पताल की जो जरूरत होती है। और मैंने तो देखा था भूज का तो पूरा अस्पताल ही ध्वस्त हो गया था, यानी पूरी व्यवस्था ही तबाह हो चुकी थी। और उसका मुझे फर्स्ट हैंड एक्सपीरियंस रहा है। वैसे ही जब 1979 में गुजरात में ही मोरबी में मच्छू डैम जो बांध टूटा और पूरा गांव पानी से तबाह हो गया, पूरा शहर मोरबी तबाही मची थी, सैकड़ों लोग मारे गए थे। एक वॉलंटियर के रूप में तब भी मैं वहां महीनों तक रह करके ग्राउंड पर काम करता था। मैं आज अपने उन अनुभवों को याद करते हुए कल्पना कर सकता हूं कि आपकी मेहनत कितनी जबरदस्त होगी, आपका जज्बा, आपकी भावनाएं मैं भली भांति फील कर सकता। आप काम वहां करते थे, मैं यहां अनुभव करता था कैसे करते होंगे। और इसलिए आज तो मौका है कि मैं आपको सैल्यूट करूं, और मैं आपको सैल्यूट करता हूं। साथियों, जब कोई अपनी मदद खुद कर सकता है तो आप उसे सेल्फ सफिशिएंट कह सकते हैं, लेकिन जब कोई दूसरों की मदद करने में सक्षम होता है तो वो सेल्फलेस होता है। ये बात व्यक्तियों पर ही नहीं बल्कि राष्ट्रों पर भी लागू होती है। इसलिए भारत ने बीते वर्षों में सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी के साथ साथ सेल्फलेसनेस की पहचान को भी सशक्त किया है। तिरंगा लेकर हम जहां भी पहुंचते हैं वहां एक आश्वासन मिल जाता है कि अब भारत की टीमें आ चुकी है, तो हालात ठीक होना शुरू हो जाएंगे। और जो सीरिया का उदाहरण बताया कि जो बक्से में जो ध्वज लगा था, बक्सा उल्टा था तो ऑरेंज कलर नीचे था, केसरिया रंग नीचे था, तो वहां के नागरिक ने उसको ठीक कर करके और गर्व से कहा कि मैं हिंदुस्तान के प्रति आदर से धन्यवाद करता हूं। तिरंगे की यही भूमिका हमने कुछ समय पहले यूक्रेन में भी देखी। जब भारतीय नागरिकों के साथ साथ संकट में फंसे अनेक देशों के साथियों के लिए भारत का तिरंगा ढाल बना, ऑपरेशन गंगा सबके लिए आशा बन करके उसने एक बहुत बड़ी मिसाल कायम की। अफगानिस्तान से भी बहुत ही विपरीत परिस्थितियों में हम अपनों को सकुशल लेकर के वापस आए। हमने ऑपरेशन देवी शक्ति चलाया। हमने यही कमिटमेंट कोरोना वैश्विक महामारी में देखा। अनिश्चितता भरे उस माहौल में भारत ने एक एक नागरिक को स्वदेश लाने का बीड़ा उठाया। हमने दूसरे देश के बहुत से लोगों की भी मदद की। ये भारत ही है जिसने दुनिया के सैकड़ों जरूरतमंद देशों को जरूरी दवाएं, वैक्सीन पहुंचाई। इसलिए आज दुनिया भर में भारत के प्रति एक सद्भावना है। साथियों, ऑपरेशन दोस्त मानवता के प्रति भारत के समर्पण और संकट में फंसे देशों की मदद के लिए तत्काल खड़े होने के हमारे कमिटमेंट को भी दर्शाता है। दुनिया में कहीं भी आपदा हो, भारत फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर के रूप में तैयार मिलता है। नेपाल का भूकंप हो, मालदीव में, श्रीलंका में संकट आए हो, भारत सबसे पहले मदद के लिए आ गया है। अब तो भारत की सेनाओं के साथ साथ एनडीआरएफ पर भी देश के अलावा दूसरे देशों का भरोसा बढ़ता जा रहा है। मुझे खुशी है कि बीते वर्षों में एनडीआरएफ ने देश के लोगों में एक बहुत अच्छी साख बनाई है। देश के लोग आपको देखकर ही, कहीं पर भी संकट की संभावना हो, साइक्लोन हो, जब जैसे ही आपको देखते हैं तो आप पर विश्वास करना शुरू कर देते हैं, आपकी बात मानना शुरू कर देते हैं। संकट की किसी घड़ी में, चाहे वो साइक्लोन हो, बाढ़ हो या फिर भूकंप जैसी आपदा, जैसे ही एनडीआरएफ की वर्दी में आप और आपके साथी फील्ड पर पहुंचते हैं, लोगों की उम्मीद लौट आती है, विश्वास लौट आता है। ये अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। जब किसी फोर्स में कुशलता के साथ संवेदनशीलता जुड़ जाती है, उसका एक मानवीय चेहरा बन जाता है, तो उस फोर्स की ताकत कई गुना बढ़ जाती है। एनडीआरएफ की इसके लिए मैं विशेष रूप से प्रशंसा करूंगा। साथियों, आपकी तैयारियां को लेकर देश आश्वस्त है, लेकिन हमें यही नहीं रुकना है। हमें आपदा के समय राहत और बचाव के अपने सामर्थ्य को और अधिक बढ़ाना है। हमें दुनिया के सर्वश्रेष्ठ राहत और बचाव दल के रूप में अपनी पहचान को सशक्त करना होगा। और इसलिए मैं जब आपसे बात कर रहा था तो लगातार पूछ रहा था कि अन्य देशों के लोग जो आए थे, उनका वर्क कल्चर, उनका स्टाइल ऑफ फंक्शनिंग, उनके इक्विपमेंट, क्योंकि ट्रेनिंग जब फील्ड में काम में आती है तो शार्पनेस और बढ़ जाती है। इतना बड़ा हादसा आपके पहुंचने से एक प्रकार से, एक संवेदना के नाते, जिम्मेवारी के नाते, मानवता के नाते हमने काम तो किया, लेकिन हम बहुत कुछ सीख करके भी आए हैं, बहुत कुछ जान करके भी आए हैं। इतनी बड़ी भयानक कैलेमिटी के बीच में जब काम करते हैं तो 10 चीजें हम भी ऑब्जर्व करते हैं, सोचते हैं ऐसा ना होता तो अच्छा होता, ये करते तो अच्छा होता, वो ऐसा करता है, चलो मैं भी ऐसा करूं, और वही हमारी क्षमता भी बढ़ाता है। तो 10 दिवस तुर्की के लोगों के लिए तो हमारा दायित्व हम निभा रहे हैं, लेकिन वहां जो हमने सीखे हैं, पाए हैं, उसको हमने डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होना चाहिए, बारीकी से डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करना चाहिए, और उसमें से हम क्या नया सीख सकते हैं। अभी भी कौन सी ऐसी चैलेंजेज आती हैं कि जिसके लिए हमें हमारी ताकत और बढ़ानी पड़ेगी, हमारी क्षमता बढ़ानी पड़ेगी। अब जैसे इस बार हमारी बेटियां गई, पहली बार गई, और मेरे पास जितनी खबर है, इन बेटियों की मौजूदगी ने भी वहां के नारी जगत के अंदर एक और विश्वास पैदा किया। वो खुल करके अपनी शिकायतें बता पाई, अपना दर्द बता पाई। अब पहले कभी कोई सोचना नहीं था कि भाई इतना बड़ा कठिन काम है, इन बेटियों को क्यों परेशान करें, लेकिन इस बार निर्णय किया गया और हमारी बेटियां, भले संख्या हमारी सीमित लेके गए थे, लेकिन वहां पर नाता जोड़ने में हमारा ये इनिशिएटिव बहुत काम आया है जी। मैं मानता हूं कि हमारी अपनी तैयारी जितनी बेहतर होगी, हम दुनिया की भी उतने ही बेहतर तरीके से सेवा कर पाएंगे। मुझे विश्वास है साथियों, आप बहुत कुछ करके आए हैं और बहुत कुछ सीख करके भी आए हैं। आपने जो किया है उससे देश का मान सम्मान बढ़ा है। आपने जो सीखा है उसको अगर हम इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करेंगे तो आने वाले भविष्य के लिए हम एक नया विश्वास पैदा करेंगे। और मुझे पक्का भरोसा है आपके हर एक के पास एक कथा है, एक अनुभव है, कुछ न कुछ कहने को है। और मैंने पूछता रहता था, मुझे खुशी होती थी कि हमारी टोली के लोग सब सलामत रहे, तबीयत भी अच्छी रही, क्योंकि ये भी चिंता रहती थी कि बहुत ही वेदर टेम्परेचर समस्याएं और वहां कोई व्यवस्था नहीं होती। जहां इस प्रकार का हादसा होता है वहां से संभव ही नहीं होता है, किसी के लिए संभव नहीं होता है। लेकिन ऐसी स्थिति में भी कठिनाइयों के बीच भी काम करना, और आप देश के नाम को रोशन करके आए हैं और बहुत कुछ सीख करके आए हैं जो आने वाले दिनों में काम आएगा। मैं फिर एक बार हृदय से बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं। मैं जानता हूं आप आज ही आए हो, थक करके आए होंगे, लेकिन मैं लगातार पिछले 10 दिन आपके संपर्क में था, जानकारियां लेता रहता था, तो मन से मैं आपसे जुड़ा हुआ था। तो मेरा मन कर गया कि घर बुलाऊं आपको, आपका अभिनंदन करूं, इतना बढ़िया काम करके आए हैं। मैं फिर से एक बार आप सबको सैल्यूट करता हूं। धन्यवाद।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi there interacting with the NDRF personnel who were part of Operation Dost. Remember, India had sent a batch of medical officers and others who were involved in the relief and rescue operation in the tragedy that struck Turkey, in which over 54,000 people lost their lives. Shifting focus back to US President Joe Biden's visit to Kyiv. Let me bring in my guests now. Fred Weyer is political analyst and Russian affairs expert. We also have Veena Sikri, former diplomat. And also on the show is Kelvin Dark. He is a Democratic strategist from Washington, D.C. Fred, I'm going to begin with you. The Ukraine visit comes at a crucial moment in the war as Joe Biden looks to keep allies unified in their support for Ukraine, as the war is expected to perhaps intensify with both sides preparing for spring offensive. How is Russia viewing this? Because, you know, Zelensky is also sending a message that he is able to unite the biggest superpower in the world on his side.
I think there's no doubt that that message is received. It is tremendously important that the United States shows this kind of solidarity with Ukraine at this stage of the war. It is, behind the scenes, perhaps a little more troubled. Joe Biden himself has a lot of, sea of political woes at home, and desperately bad approval ratings, and even a majority of Democrats don't think he should run again. So he's got reasons to make a trip like this, to show the flag, to show himself in that active role. And there is maybe softening support in Europe and in the United States for this blank check that the United States in particular has been giving to Ukraine. But at the end of the day, this visit is quite a tremendous boost for the Ukrainians, and probably for the idea of solidarity with Ukraine in the wider West.
I can see Alexei as well joining us. He's a Ukrainian MP joining me from Kyiv. It did come as a surprise to the entire world. But what about Ukraine? Was Zelensky and his team, all of you, aware that U.S. President will be taking a train ride to come all the way to Kyiv?
Definitely, Ukrainian government knew it before, and not just, wow, Biden came. It's not like this. We invited President of the United States to Ukraine, and we were waiting for him. And when he decided that he can come, we are absolutely happy that he did it. Because now it's a great moment for this. Because these days, in the imagination of Putin, was preparation for a military parade in Kyiv, which he was going to take in 3 days 1 year ago. And this day, he should show to the whole world his strength and how, he's a superpower and everything else. But in reality, this day, he is absolutely humiliated. He is just a war criminal and terrorist, and he failed completely in Ukraine. Russia is not superpower anymore, absolutely. And at this day, there is a president of nuclear state in Kyiv. But yes, it's not Putin, it's Biden.
Yes,
so
and
God
Kyiv
bless
is
America,
standing.
and thanks to President Biden.
Yes, I can see that hat as well of yours. But is there a sense that perhaps this visit could have happened earlier? Because, there have been visits by French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor has visited Kyiv, Canadian Prime Minister, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. All of them have paid the visit already.
It's great that they visited already. Several days ago, I met with President Macron, with Rishi Sunak, and I thank them personally for all their support for Ukraine. But that's a great moment to come and for President Biden, and it's historical. It's for the first time in modern U.S. history that American president is coming abroad to the war zone, which is not controlled by American forces. So that is great. That is a very strong signal to, first of all, to Putin, that he should finish this war, get out from Ukraine, that he will never win this war. And the best he can do just to stop it now, not killing more tens of thousands of Russian people, also Russian people, but definitely for us, the most important is Ukraine. So that is, we don't have feeling that he should come earlier. He came now, and that's absolutely great.
Yes. Mr. Dark, the point being made by Alexei is very well taken, that this is for the first time that a U.S. president is visiting a war-torn nation, the one where U.S. doesn't really have a direct stake.
Absolutely. And don't forget that was also a hard way. There are no flights to Ukraine.
Yes.
So that was a very long way from the United States to get to Kyiv. It was a flight to Poland, then a train for many hours to Kyiv. It's a hard and quite dangerous trip, which President of the United States made.
Okay.
Absolutely having in mind to show the solidarity with the Ukrainian people, show that there is no any fatigue of the West on which Russia hopes that it will happen. It will never happen.
Okay. Kelvin Dark, this question certainly that, it's coming at a time when Joe Biden's own ratings are that he is a tired president, that he should perhaps take a rest and not go in for another tenure or fight for another tenure. The question then is that he did not really make any substantial promise. Of course, Zelensky wanted some promise in terms of weapon support, bigger weapon support, and he wanted some speed up in delivery of pledged weapon systems. That hasn't happened. Why do you think, though Joe Biden talked about $500 million, he did not make any new commitments?
Well, I think that we can't underestimate the importance of the commitments he did make. I like to think of it as he came to Ukraine with two sets of weapons. The first set was the $500 million in military equipment that has been desperately needed. But the other set of weapons was this very public show of support by the United States. And the reason that's so valuable is one of the things I think Putin was considering is that there would be fatigue, that if a year ago, he would have thought the U.S. and the West would not have been continually supporting Ukraine. So as we approach the 1-year anniversary this week of Russia's illegal invasion into Ukraine, Joe Biden probably gave them the most valuable thing that he could, and that was to show that our support from the U.S. is unwavering. So I think now there, of course, there are other weapon systems and other things that Zelensky wants, and I think that if the U.S. president and Congress deem it appropriate, then maybe we'll do that. But I don't think we should underestimate the power of the 2 sets of weapons he sent today to Ukraine.
I think that's very well read, Kelvin Dark. The message was here that U.S. stands with Ukraine as long as it takes to repel Russian forces, even as public opinion certainly is suggesting that the U.S. and allied support for providing weaponry and direct economic assistance has started to soften. Let me bring in diplomat Veena Sikri. Here in India, I think the sides have been taken by most Western forces. US, UK visit their premiers, visiting ground zero in a war zone, standing with Zelensky. But as far as India is concerned, it has been doing the tightrope walk, but also sending a message that the 2 sides must come on the talking table because diplomacy and dialogue is the only way forward. So how do you think this visit in particular will make the Indian establishment look at it? How is New Delhi viewing it?
Certainly it is a very important visit. It's a visit taken at great risk, as we have seen, going to Poland and then taking the train to Kyiv. It's a visit directly linked with the first anniversary of the special military operation that Russia launched against Ukraine. And at this first anniversary, I think President Biden wanted to show the complete unwavering support of the USA and, of course, accompanied by all his allies to the people of Ukraine. And I think a critical factor that has been brought in with this visit is that President Biden, in addition to his talks in Kyiv, is having very important meetings in Poland, where he is meeting the Bucharest 9. Now, this is a group of 9 Central European countries, and it seems to me that President Biden is now trying to give these 9 countries a huge boost and boosting their important role in the whole struggle, in the whole conflict that is going on in Ukraine. These are 3 former Soviet republics, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. And then there are the group of East European countries. There is Romania and Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic and Slovakia and Bulgaria. And now this approach to strengthen these countries and bring them as the frontline states in the war with Russia, this has a great possibility of further boosting, or should I say, taking the war, the struggle, the conflict to the next higher level. It is very worrisome, because we do know that with this visit of President Biden to Kyiv, the requests, the strong demands that Ukraine has been making for more advanced tanks, for fighter jet aircraft, and for longer range missiles, these demands will get a further boost. So you might see more and more weaponry, more and more arms and ammunition pouring into Ukraine. And this will further strengthen the clash of the spring offensive. There's already, as we are getting reports,
so what does it actually mean for China? Because Kelvin Dark, the visit also comes after the US, in fact, said that China was considering arming Russia in its war against Ukraine. However, Beijing has denied it, as it has been saying that it believes in dialogue to end this conflict. How do you think China will be viewing this?
Well, I think that the visit by President Biden, also the in Munich with the Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, they made it clear that the United States realizes this is at least on the table to provide lethal help to Russia by China. And I think that the speech today by Biden reinforced the fact that China really has to consider what aid that they're going to be giving to Russia, because not only will that prolong the conflict in Ukraine, but it could make the already tense relations between the United States and China much worse. And, they do have interest, of course, to partner with Russia, but they have also probably greater interest with the United States because of our economic ties. So I think that this speech today was just as much of a message to China as it was to Russia and others around the world who might consider illegally invading their neighbor or doing something along the lines of what Putin did starting almost a year ago.
Fred, let me give you the final word. Kyiv is standing, and it was seen that Kyiv perhaps will fall within a week. That did not really happen. The fact that there has been an evident miscalculation on part of Moscow, that cannot be overlooked either. And is there a sense in Moscow that this is a prolonged war that they have begun?
I think so. I think there is no doubt that they totally misconstrued what Ukraine was capable of, what its allies were capable of in terms of supporting it. They did recognize that within a month and pull away from Kyiv and move back to the East Ukraine, which is the focus of the Russian offensive. But they've also had a mass mobilization. They've reconstituted their army. They are clearly gearing up for a major offensive. And I guess we'll know more tomorrow because President Putin is slated to make his big State of the Nation address before the Duma tomorrow. And, the other shoe may drop.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Kelvin Dock, Veena Sikri, Fred Wire, and all.